college football misconceptions. What are the ones that we need to address before we jump into the 2023 season? I said this to start the show, but I want to say it again. Y'all are probably already in tune with these. We have a very, very intelligent audience here at the Hard Count. So to kind of get lined up on these, what are the misconceptions that could be floating out there that we need to make sure we stay away from? And the first one, I think, is probably the loudest, and that is that Ryan Day is somehow on the hot seat. Two things can be true here. One, it's not okay to lose to Michigan if you're the head coach at Ohio State. Never okay, never acceptable. He came on this very show, told us the exact same thing. The standard is the standard. Beat your rival. He did not say Michigan. He said your rival, which implies Michigan, but credit to Coach Day for not even saying the word Michigan as the Ohio State head coach. Win the Big Ten, win the Natty. That's the standard. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. So no, never okay to lose to Michigan. The other thing, though, that could be true, and I believe that is true, Ryan Day is one of the best head coaches in college football. Has a record of 45-6. And some people are murmuring, well, if Ohio State doesn't win a national title, or if they lose to Michigan again, well, maybe his seat heats up a little bit. Maybe Ohio State looks somewhere else. No. If you were to look somewhere else outside of Ryan Day, where would you look? Where would you look? Short of Urban Meyer, who is someone that is accessible for Ohio State to hire and make their head coach? Ryan Day's recruiting at a high level. Ohio State has an extremely talented roster. Just because they haven't got it done doesn't mean he still isn't a phenomenal head football coach. Doesn't mean he's not still the right guy at Ohio State. They were a field goal kick away from sending Georgia home. We all saw what Georgia did in the national title game. Like, Ohio State is in good position. It's never okay to lose to Michigan, but Ryan Day's seat in no way, shape, or form should be hot. I also want to make sure we get this in there. A lot of people are saying things about A lot of people are saying things about Ryan Day and his ability to get over the hump and win a national title. They were saying the same thing about Kirby Smart at virtually the same point in his career as a head coach at Georgia. Because remember, he lost to Alabama, and they weren't able to get over the hump and win a national title, and they were saying things about how he could develop a quarterback, and now Kirby Smart, 2 national title rings later, is on the hunt for his 3rd in a row. I'm not saying it's the same story with Ryan Day, but I just want to make sure we're all on the same page here. Just because he hasn't done it yet does not mean that Ryan Day is still not capable of winning a national title. Doesn't mean he's still not the guy you want and potentially could even need at Ohio State for the future. So Ryan Day, absolutely not on the hot seat at Ohio State. Should not be a conversation we're having right now. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you're locked in. Follow me on the socials at JD Piquel, Instagram, Twitter. Great way for us to stay in the know and great way for us to stay connected, rather. Thank you in advance for that. Okay, another misconception that's floating out there right now is that LSU, after year 1, has already put the growing pains behind them and that they are at a cruising altitude. Meaning last year was kind of the get your feet wet year, right? We all talked about that. We all kind of tried to temper expectations and said, hey, if you win 8 games, that's phenomenal. That's progress. Brian Kelly's the right guy. I want to have this out there because LSU, I believe, when it comes to SEC Media Day, will probably be picked to win the SEC West. I'm not even here to tell you that shouldn't be the case. But if LSU doesn't win the SEC West, if they don't win double-digit ball games this coming season, the sky is not falling in Baton Rouge. Year 1 was not a fluke. Year 1 was not something to where it's like, oh, is that reliable? Are we sure we can still trust what we saw in year 1? Was that just something that was kind of a flash in the pan? No, of course not. To the same token, though, I think LSU is still becoming Brian Kelly's program. Brian Kelly doesn't even have all his guys on this team just yet. Like, he hasn't even recruited multiple classes just yet that are going to make up the majority of this roster. Now, he's recruited really well so far. They've done really well through the portal. Got Jaden Daniels through the portal, to be clear. But still, this isn't necessarily a Brian Kelly football team from a roster standpoint or from a culture standpoint. And y'all that are Tiger fans that have tuned into this show for any length of time and heard me talk about Brian Kelly and LSU, this is how we feel. We saw a product on the field for LSU a season ago that was semi-inconsistent. They look one way against Auburn. look one way against Tennessee. They look one way against Alabama. Look one way against Texas A&M. Like, we weren't sure which LSU team we were going to get week in and week out. And that's a part of the process of maturing as a football team and doing things Brian Kelly's way, being detail-oriented, sticking to the standard. All these things that Brian Kelly's going to hold this team to in the future, that's still permeating throughout this roster. And that's going to become a thing for LSU for years to come. So what I'm trying to say is it's headed the right direction. I've been on record here and I say I think LSU is going to win a national title before Brian Kelly is done at LSU. But if they don't win 10 games this year, it's not like they're in a bad position. I don't think they're just at cruising altitude quite yet. Okay? Another misconception right now. A lot of pressure on the good folks in Austin, Texas. A lot of pressure on the Longhorns. And the misconception that we need to address is that Texas needs to win a Big 12 title. Notice the verbiage there. They need to win a Big 12 title. That's kind of the phrase you're going to hear people talk about. I don't know if that's necessarily the case. In fact, I guess with it being a part of this segment, I don't believe that's the case. I think Texas probably needs to make the Big 12 title game, but this is a team that won 8 games a season ago. Do you want to win a Big 12 title? Of course. Do you need to, or it's a failed season? No. No, you don't need to. I think you need to make a statement, and I think making the Big 12 title game would do that. But this is a team that I think is still developing and still, I say developing. I think with how they've recruited, it would be foolish to assume that not winning a Big 12 title in 2023 is a failure. If you make the Big 12 title game and you got a top 3 class from 2023 just hanging out on that roster, you got Arch Manning for the future, like, you don't need to win a Big 12 title. Now, good people in Austin, don't be upset with me when I say that to you. I'm telling you that not to put your expectations at a lower level. I'm just saying I don't think it's a failure if you don't win the Big 12. I think Steve Sarkisian has given you positive feedback so far in terms of what he's done on the field and how they've built this thing, what they've done on the recruiting trail. Like, it's trending in the right direction. Double-digit win season for Texas is what I would want to see, and I think that would come right along with a Big 12 title appearance. So Texas would like to win a Big 12 title for sure. Do they need to, or we're just saying that the Steve Sarkisian experiment is over? No. Don't think that's the case for us when it comes to talking about the Longhorns. This is a misconception that I think has been out there for a little bit, and it's Lincoln Riley can't win the big one. And last year at USC didn't do a lot to help this for Lincoln Riley because they lost the Pac-12 championship in a somewhat embarrassing fashion. Okay, it wasn't somewhat. It was just an embarrassing fashion. Had a lead against Tulane in the New Year's Six Bowl, and they blew that lead and lost that game. And to make matters worse, it was Tulane. It was a Group of 5 school. And so everybody is piling on Lincoln Riley now and saying he's 0-3 in the college football playoff. He can't win the big one. And I think this is a misconception for a couple of reasons. Whenever you say can't, you're speaking in absolutes. Speaking in absolutes about a head football coach that's 39 years old just feels very, very inappropriate. On top of that, when you say he can't win the big one, I would imagine you're also including conference title games somewhere in the range of what the big one would include. He's got 4 Big 12 titles to his name. So to say he can't win the big one, I guess the feedback you'd get or the kickback on that would be, well, he can't win the national title. He's 39 years old. You know how old Nick Saban was when he won his first national title? I'll pause to let you guess real quick. 53 years old. 53 years old. Lincoln Riley is going to be 40 in September. Early happy birthday to Lincoln Riley. I just think it's way too early to say that he can't do something. Kirby Smart didn't get his first national title till he was 45 plus. Like, if we're going to say something definitive about Lincoln Riley, I think it would be that he develops good quarterbacks, that he's recruited well, he's worked the portal, all the things that you would probably need to eventually win a national title. I feel like he's doing those right now. The big question mark is always going to be, well, what's the defense look like? We'll talk about that as we get more into the season. But as it pertains to Lincoln Riley, to say he can't win the big one, it's an absolute. I think it's irresponsible. Just look at what Nick Saban did when he was 53. Lincoln Riley's 39. Misconception. Last misconception I want to talk about here. Let's go down to the Sunshine State. There is the thought out there that Miami and Florida are both just down bad. And I wouldn't say you're incorrect in assuming that both those programs are at low points right now. But I would also say the low point to me is like the starting point. Like when you're looking up at a mountain, yes, you're at the low point of the mountain, but it's because you're still starting to climb. And that's what I think is going on right now at Florida and Miami. Florida State, to be real, had a pop year this last year, huge expectations for 2023, but Florida State also missed a bowl game last year. I say last year, 2 years ago. Like, a year can change a lot of how we perceive these teams. Florida is recruiting really well right now in the 2024 cycle. Miami had a top 10 class last year. They're doing the right things. And I think there has to be some growing pains that goes in with a first-year head coach. And I also said this on a previous live show. I'll say it again right now. Not all year one situations are created equally. Dan Mullen didn't really help Billy Napier a whole lot when he left the cupboard, I don't know, bare, but not really stocked for him when it comes to the talent that he had on defense and the depth on defense. Mario Cristobal walked in, and there was some things offensively, schematically, that he felt weren't a fit. The offensive line, personnel-wise, wasn't good enough. Like, these situations weren't just ready-made to walk in and win a conference title. So to say they're down bad and you got to just, ignore them, I think that's irresponsible. I think it's a misconception to just discredit and count out Miami or Florida. So I want to make sure we're all clear on those misconceptions. But again, y'all that watch the show, y'all that are tuned in here, I have to believe that y'all are already in the know. So thank you for that, and thank you for being just diehards about this sport. We're glad to have you here. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you're locked in. Make sure you're on the podcast. All that. We got to do our best to kind of get these misconceptions away from the rest of our college football friends and family. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.